Just recently saw a grappling match between Anthony Pettis and Jorge Masvidal. Both are your guys. Great cause, great match it ended up being. Just tell me a little bit about the idea behind that.
I lost you, Fair.
No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying, just tell me a little bit about the idea behind that grappling match.
Man,
And yeah,
that was so much fun. I am not a big, I want to watch jiu-jitsu all the time. I'm really not. I'm being real with you guys. I prefer, I come from boxing, as a boxing fan, I should say. However, I wrestled back in the day, so I love the wrestling and the jiu-jitsu. But I'm not one of those guys that says, let me go watch jiu-jitsu today, right? I'm not looking for it. But I will tell you, everybody this, and they're not just my guys. I work it out like the equivalent of, let's say, Fabricio Verdum grappling against Alexei Olenek. I think people want to see who's the better grappler. What happens there. These guys it's high level. It's not just two guys trying to make it. These guys put on a show, a legit show for the fans. So it was real fun. We got approached by one of the promoters, and he said to me, man, look, we have this foundation. It really is for the kids. This is not for anything else. I have no reason to do this outside of, just for the kids. Whatever we raise, we're going to give to the kids. And I was like, well, okay, cool. That sounds like a cool thing. Let me see if these guys are interested. I in my opinion, if we're not actively looking for our guys to do things outside of just the cage, you're not doing your job. You've got to be able to do that. So for a guy like Jorge, who has a fight coming up with Ben now, I thought, hey, why don't you grapple and see where you are? Why not do that? And it's for a good cause. And I know that in Jorge's mind, if I ever come to him with something for a good cause and a legit good cause, he is one of those guys that's very, yes, whatever you want, let's go do it, no problem. And Anthony is the same exact way. Anthony is a guy who, yes, he's flashy. Yes, you're going to see him stylish, Givenchy. You name it, Anthony's got it. You know what I mean? He's that guy. He's Showtime for a reason. But when you tell them, hey, it's for the kids, both these guys have kids. Both these guys understand the idea of being able to go to a gym and stay off the streets. These guys, grew up in bad situations, I just say mean streets. These are real two guys that have really done that. So for them to just say yes to me, and it was not hard to get them to say yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. I get to go up against Jorge. Let's do it. And then, in Jorge's case, hey, it's going to be against Anthony. Oh man, that'd be great. These kids are going to love it. That's what the response was. And then they go out there and put on a show. I was like, it blew my mind. I had so much fun watching, and they had so much fun doing it that I was like, man, this is great. So the idea came up like that. And then once Jorge and Anthony said yes, I tell Yoel, hey, Yoel, these guys are doing this. What do you think? And he goes, well, who do you have for me? And the situation with Yoel, there's not a lot of big guys out there that would be, that would be able to do it. So Chris Barnett, graciously took it, knowing that it's probably going to be a bad night just because Yoel is, Olympic wrestler. So it's hard to find guys to do it. But Chris is, way more than Yoel, and he is a tough guy at the end of the day. He's not a bad guy. So it was an easy sell for Yoel. And Yoel historically has done well with special needs kids. That's where Yoel really, his heart goes in terms of, the giving back. He does a lot with with those kids. That's where it was. And Yoel, it was easy. I have never had, I think I have a harder time getting these guys to do hey, do you want to go do an appearance for 10 grand or 5 grand or whatever? This being, for charity was so easy. It was a pretty amazing time. Amazing thing to do.
And it's never been a better time for your guys now looking at things. Jorge Masvidal is one of those guys because I used to watch him from Tales from the Grind. So I've been a fan long before I was a journalist. So to see him kind of getting the shine that he deserves, because he's been one of those guys that never really got the respect he deserves, but he's been the same guy from day one. And I know you know him so well. He's your neighbor, right, as well?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so you've been there from day one with him, and how great is it to see him finally get that respect?
Man, I couldn't be happier for a guy who probably deserves it. I think all the guys deserve it. I wish the shine came on a lot to a lot of these guys. I think he did what he was supposed to do, which was obviously win in the octagon. When you win in that cage, everything afterwards comes with it. I tell all the guys, don't try to go out there and be Conor, because there's only one Conor. Don't go out there and try to be, the Anderson Silvas of the world, the John Jones of the world. You guys can't be those guys. you got to be your own person. When you are your own person, people are either going to love you or hate you, and it's okay. You want that. You need that. You need to be able to get that. So be natural and be cool, and usually it works. And I can put other guys in that same conversation as well. Yoel Romero has been the same guy for the last 30 years. He hasn't changed who he was, and people love him and hate him. It's just the way it goes. Jorge has been Jorge for as long as I can remember. He is one of the realest guys in the sport. I really wish there were more stories about guys in this sport, because these guys know they can pretty much beat the normal guy. If any normal guys listen to this wanted to ever challenge a fighter, I strongly advise you guys not to do that. These guys will hurt you, and they have the ability to hurt you. These guys know they can hurt you. They usually try not to hurt you. That's how it is. I remember, I'm going to use the Avengers as a talking point, and the Black Widow is talking to Bruce Banner, and she says, you spend your whole life trying not to fight because you know you'll win. Think about that for a second. These are guys, because when he turns into Hulk, he doesn't lose. These guys spend their lives outside of the cage trying not to fight. So if people understood that about them, I think they would see their personality shine and who they are shine, because they're usually really good-hearted people. I don't see most of the guys in the sport being just dirty or negative. I don't see that at all.
I agree. And for Anthony, he's got a massive fight with Nate Diaz. We were just talking about how this isn't manufactured beef, is it? I mean, this goes way back. And stylistically, it's just such a fun match. Honestly, I think Anthony Pettis versus anyone is just stylistically fun. But this fight is it feels like it's a long time to make, and I'm surprised they haven't fought before.
So this fight, in my opinion, is in terms of showmanship and what's out there. Listen, outside of Conor fighting, and even Conor fighting Khabib, in my opinion, that's not the fight. I'm not really I actually don't want to see that fight again right now. Maybe after a while, yes, but right now I don't think that's the fight. Outside of Conor fighting one of these other guys, I think Conor versus Anthony is the fight. I'm looking at it like Anthony beats Nate, and I think Conor is next on the horizon. I don't think there's any way, there could be any other fight up there. Because we've seen Anthony versus Kawa. We've seen Anthony. Now we'll see Anthony versus Nate. They genuinely don't like each other. They genuinely don't see eye to eye. And they're two guys that, they're going to come forward. They're going to throw, and the better man is going to win. And I think if Anthony does what he's supposed to do, he will win. And I think next in line should be Conor. I don't think there should be anybody else.
And it says something that Nate, for years, hasn't really been that motivated to fight. And all of a sudden they throw Anthony Pettis, and that's the fight that brings him out of kind of his long layoff.
Say that again. I lost you there for a second. Which one?
Yeah, I said it says something, the fact that Nate hasn't fought for years, and he's kind of struggled to find the motivation, and it was Anthony Pettis that kind of got him excited and wanting to fight.
Well, we needed Anthony to do what he did to Thompson, right?
Yeah.
If Anthony doesn't do that to Thompson, I don't think anybody's going, this is the fight to make with Nate and Anthony. So Anthony did his part, and listen, every fighter has the ability to say no. Every fighter has the ability to say, I'm not fighting for the next 3 years, or I'm not fighting for the next 3 months, or I'm not fighting for the next, whatever it may be. Nate is in the position when he says that, everybody says, oh, okay, cool, no problem. Where another fighter says that, who may not have the same notoriety as Nate, they end up getting, maybe penalized or they kind of get put at the back of the line. It doesn't happen with Nate Diaz. He has a following. He has a name. He's one of the OGs of the sport. And, I take nothing away from Nate, obviously, on that end. So he has that ability to get Nate to get up in the morning and say, that's the dude I want to fight. I think we're going to see fireworks August 17th.
Absolutely. And Yoel Romero, another one of your guys, he's going to fight Paulo Costa. First of all, the lawsuit that you guys won, all that money. I mean, just talk to me a little bit about that, because it almost sounded like it was a typo when we all read it online.
Man, it was a good day in court. I've been with Yoel. I've been with Yoel since the beginning of this thing. I was the witness that he needed in there, so I can explain the business side of it and show the judge where he lost his money and why this was so detrimental to him, and how these companies are able to just market to people and say, hey, this is what we're gonna give you, but really there's other stuff in there. It's just wrong. I'm not cool with stuff like that, because I'm not in the best shape of my life, but I know what I'm putting in my body. I know when I go eat that cheeseburger, it's not good for me. I don't need you to tell me it's not good for me. But you know what? When I'm trying to get into shape and I'm trying to work out and I'm trying to do these things, when I take a product, I'm expecting that product to be as good as what I'm, like, in other words, just how I know it's bad for me, I should be able to know it's good for me. When you're taking these products and you don't know what's in them, it's very, very, very sneaky, you know. So I'm just glad it came out like that. And more importantly than the money, I know people don't get this about us, but I didn't make money on Yoel, you know, having this problem with USADA and having his name torn through the mud. You know, I didn't make money doing that. What I did was I stuck through the man, through the mud, through the hate, through all that stuff, and I kept telling him, keep your head up. You will see, we'll clear your name. We're going to get your name cleared. We're going to get your name cleared. We put out a plan to get his name cleared, and it worked, you know, and I'm glad it did. And for the most part, now people are sitting there saying, okay, so maybe the guy didn't cheat. Well, no, he told me to my face he didn't cheat. He told you guys to your face he didn't cheat. The guy's nickname is a soldier of God. Why don't you believe him? Like, you know, to me, that's the part that, you know, had me, but I get why they don't believe him. He doesn't pass the eye test. You know, he is older in age, but man, the guy is physically gifted. He hasn't changed. His body has not changed since he was in Cuba, you know, wrestling for that team. So you could just go back and search photos of him, you know, when he was 18, 19 years old. The guy aged, but he doesn't look any different, you know? So I believed him when he told me. I told him I'll fight with you all the way through. We did, and we came out on top in court, man, and I'm just happy. Believe it or not, clearing his name was way more important than any settlement number that could be there, because you know, the money comes and goes, but your name, man, that's what you leave when you're gone. And if people remember you as a cheat, you'll always be a cheat. But if people remember you as the guy that, you know, fought to clear your name, they're going to say, man, that was the best fighter in the history of the UFC, probably to never win a belt.
Absolutely, and he's taking on Paulo Costa. This fight kind of fell apart and came back together. Is this the fight he's always wanted? Like, was he dead set on Paulo Costa, or were there other names in the process that he may have potentially fought?
Well, I think in Yoel's mind, the only name that makes sense is the champion, and that could be a Desanaya, that could be Whitaker, it could be anybody, you know. And I almost believe that with him. I don't think there's any doubt that he's probably the number one guy. Even with that Desanaya beating Kelvin Gastelum, there's a reason they didn't put Kelvin versus Yoel. There's a reason, you know, they didn't want to do that, and there's a reason why they probably wouldn't do a Desanaya versus Yoel as well. He is the scariest man in the division. I truly, in my heart, believe he won that second fight clearly. I don't think there's really much of a discussion on that, and I know. This takes nothing from Rob. I hope everybody understands that. Rob, to me, to last as long as he lasted with Yoel is really, truly something. But nobody comes back after fighting Yoel the same. Go down the list. I don't even have to tell you. You probably know that as it stands. He, to me, is the number one guy in that division. You got to think it's because of him Luke Rockhold's going to the 205. He can say whatever he wants about a weight cut, but if you're not beating Yoel Romero, you don't need to be in 185. You don't need to be in that division. Chris Weidman, God bless his soul, he's big for 205. So is Luke, but I think Chris is going up to 205, really probably because of the same reason. If and when Yoel beats Paulo Costa, which I truly believe he's going to knock out Paulo on August 17th, let's be real. Who's left for him to prove that he needs to get another crack at the title holder, whether it's a Desanaya or Whitaker? I think most people, if Whitaker versus Yoel was such a huge fight back then, and everybody loves that fight, it's the fight of the year and everything's going good, sure, give Whitaker another fight in between. I'm okay with that. I think Yoel was okay with that as well. But if Yoel's still there, I think that's the fight. I think people still want to see that. Not to say Desanaya can't win, and I think Desanaya, you know, was really careful with his words to Yoel. Not many people have the cojones, as they say down here in Miami, to mention Yoel's name in these things. Paulo had to, because Paulo's so far down the rankings. He needed to do that, and maybe, you know, he feels he can beat Yoel, and we'll find that out on August 17th. But outside of that, I don't know any other person that's really called out Yoel. It's not. He is the boogeyman. People say that about Tony Ferguson. I don't necessarily know people are turning down fights with Tony. With Yoel, it's like, hey, Yoel wants to fight Gastelum. Gastelum said no. Okay. Yoel wants to fight Desanaya. Desanaya said no. Okay. Yoel wants to fight so-and-so. So-and-so said no. Paulo talked his way into this fight. I want to make it very clear. Paulo absolutely talked his way into this fight because Yoel has no reason to take this fight. I think he just wants to really hurt this man. I really feel that way. My conversations with Yoel have been really deep, and I think he really, really wants to hurt Paulo Costa. I don't think this is about winning or losing. I just think the idea that, you know, Paulo was saying Yoel's afraid. Yoel's never turned down a fight in his life. Has he turned down a fight? So when you start talking about Yoel told me when I first got him a few years back, he goes, I have a list of guys on paper that I want to fight. And at the time, Paulo wasn't on that list, but there were some other names on that list. And they all said something negative about Yoel. When people talk bad about Yoel, usually ends bad for them. It doesn't usually end bad for Yoel. It usually ends bad for them. So, I'll take, you can look at Rob. Rob's never mentioned one bad thing about Yoel, ever. And, he ended up getting the nod. But just to show you, it's a different fighter when you're going in there with a guy who really wants to hurt you. So